Good day, everybody. My name is Dennis Collier, and we are going to see how fast I can run a 10-kilometer race. But not just any 10K. I am officially registered for the Toronto Zoo 10K race on September the 13th. And evidently, from this screenshot I took this morning, I have 2 months, 21 days, 20 hours, 13 minutes, and 46 seconds until the race starts on that day. So, in this video, and actually a secondary video to accompany it, we're going to investigate the kind of training and nutrition that I'm going to undertake leading up to the Toronto Zoo 10K race to see how fast I can run 10 kilometers. Now, this particular race has always had a very special place in my heart. I think in the decade of the 2010s, I ran this thing every single September. However, as I was doing a bit of research, Googling myself, getting ready for this video, I discovered to my dismay that I have not actually registered for this race since 2019. I know that, obviously in 2020, COVID canceled everything in the world, and in 21, they didn't run the race live either. So anyway, it's been a few years since I have registered and ran the Toronto Zoo 10K race. So I guess this past semester, after talking to these great runners like Brendon Rodney and Rachel Hanna, kind of motivated me to get my button gear and register for the race. So we're going to see how well I do this September the 13th. Speaking of which, how well I'm going to do, you can see the last time, actually, what is that time? Last time I ran this race, 2019, my time was 48 minutes, 59 seconds. Can I do that this year, do you think? It is 6 years later, and by 6 years later, I mean 6 years older and therefore 6 years worse. So what would be the fastest time I ever ran a 10K? It's amazing you can find all this stuff online. Anyway, evidently, the fastest time I ever posted in the Toronto Zoo 10K was in 2016, 45 minutes, 35.7 seconds. Now, that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago. So we got to put all this in perspective in determining what's a realistic goal for me this year. Okay, what could be my goal? What could be my goal? What could be my goal time? Got to have a goal. Got to have a specific goal. All right, considering it was 6 years ago I last ran this thing, and I ran it in 49 minutes, give or take, and the fastest I ever ran it was 45 something, and I'm much older now, and my hair is much grayer. What could be my goal? Let's say I am going to run the Toronto Zoo 10K on September the 13th, 2025 in a time of 50 minutes. 50 minutes or better. That's going to be my goal. Okay, so what's the training plan to see if I can run a 10K in under 50 minutes 12 weeks from now? Here you see a very lovely color-coded table that I've put together summarizing this training plan. Actually, this is just the first 6 weeks. In the second video, I'll show you the table for the last 6 weeks. So to summarize real quick, as you can see, the plan is to train 5 out of 7 days per week. 3 of these days are going to be running. 2 of the days are going to be not running. I think maybe the simplest way to explain this is to begin with the simplest things. So you see in the purple column there, 1 day per week I'm going to be doing resistance training, and that's going to be exclusively upper body resistance training. Give my legs a break on that day of the week. So we're going to go into the gym, lift weights, push-pull type of stuff. I think that resistance training, whatever you're doing, it offers unique benefits. whether that be running a 10K race or anything else really. Resistance training is unique in the benefits that it offers. I would never ever want to go a training block without having weights. So 1 day a week we're going to be pumping the iron. The next thing I should probably explain is the two different columns there actually that are both in gray and have written in caps no less, Zone 2, and the fact that these columns appear there twice probably speaks to the importance of this type of training for any endurance performance goals. I'm not the biggest fan in the world of the term zone 2. Not everybody uses these terms, these zones. I find them kind of, I don't know, kind of weird. Zone 1, zone 2. What do these zones mean? It's not entirely clear with that terminology. I think it's better to explain physiologically what is happening in zone 2 and why zone 2 is so important to endurance type of training. So basically, working in zone 2 means you are performing at the point just below the point at which your body would begin to accumulate lactate. The accumulation of lactate being a hallmark of the conversion to anaerobic instead of aerobic metabolism. And this is not great for endurance, prolonged endurance performance. If you can keep working aerobically versus anaerobically, you can produce like 10 times the ATP. So it behooves an athlete, especially an endurance athlete, to be able to work, produce as much power, run as fast as possible, whatever term you want to use, in zone 2. And really the most interesting thing that happens when you do all this great work in zone 2 is the creation of more mitochondria. These are a cellular organelle. They call it the cellular powerhouse. What you're doing essentially, if you think of it this way, the more mitochondria you have, it's like you're laying down the infrastructure to be able to continue metabolizing aerobically. The reactions of aerobic metabolism literally occur inside the mitochondria, which are these little tiny organelles in your cells. The more you have, the more you can potentially metabolize aerobically. For example, if you're like an elite endurance athlete, you might have like 300 times the mitochondria of a regular Joe. So that's really what's happening to enable you to put forth a really, really good endurance performance. Not the least of which other things happen. Your heart gets better, your lungs get better, all kinds of beneficial things happen. But really the purpose of this zone 2 stuff is the development of more mitochondria. Here's another excellent question. How do you know you're working in zone 2? I'll tell you 3 different ways to identify that you're working in zone 2, going in order most complicated to least complicated, the one I prefer being the least complicated. Like I mentioned earlier, the threshold of zone 2 is the accumulation of lactate. Not the production, by the way, of lactate, but the accumulation. You can produce this stuff, but again, as you get more and more aerobically fit, your body has the ability to whisk it away. Again, this is your circulatory system being able to grab and take the lactate out of the working muscle. So it's not just the creation, but the accumulation of this stuff. Once it exceeds a threshold, you know you've passed zone 2. Some people they measure actually. You can take blood tests and measure your blood lactate levels. I've never done it myself personally in my training. I've seen it done, but never done it myself because it's the most complicated way. The second way that people talk about zone 2 style training usually is the old-fashioned heart rate, and the general guideline is 220 minus your age is your upper limit of what your heart rate should be, and then you have percentages of that. And if you know if you're working and your heart rate is at a certain number, you can say, well, this is X percentage of my theoretical max heart rate. There's some guesswork involved in that as well, so I'm not a huge fan of that either. So really for me, the third one that I'm going to talk about is my preferred one for determining if you're in zone 2, which is just how do you feel. The other litmus test for this very often cited is can you talk, can you carry a conversation while you're exercising. I know I never ever run with anybody else, so I don't need to talk to anybody, but you do a mental check. How do I feel? Is this comfortable? Can I keep doing this for an extended period of time? And if the answer is yes, for me, then I'm pretty confident I'm working in zone 2. Okay, so like I said, I have actually 2 different days out of the week when I'm trying to work in zone 2, create more mitochondria for myself. One is the run. One's the cornerstone of all endurance training, the weekend long run. Now, my 10K is only going to take me under 50 minutes, hopefully. So I'm going to hover around there. I'm just starting off today. I'll go for a 45-minute run. And then each subsequent week, I'm going to work my way up by 5s, 50, 55, till I hit 60 minutes in week number 4. And then I'm just going to run 60 minutes every weekend. My second day per week of zone 2 style training is not running. And for this, I know I might take some flack from the real true running experts of the world. And they'd say, if your goal is to run a 10K in 50 minutes or less, you should probably run more. And that might be true. I'll take that criticism. Running 4 days a week instead of 3 might possibly be better. The problem is, for me, I'm not a runner, really. 3 days a week on my feet is quite sufficient for me, and I would prefer to kind of balance things out. So my second day of zone 2 style training, I'm going to go to the gym / pool. I'm going to do a combination of rowing and swimming, like 20 and 20 minutes, something like that. And to me, that gives my legs a little bit of a break. Both those modalities of exercise, whether you're on the rowing erg or in the pool, predominantly are upper body in nature. So that kind of balances out the resistance training. I told you I'm going to do 1 day of upper body resistance training per week, throw in this upper body based zone 2 style training. That's 2 days of upper body work per week, give my legs a little bit of a rest, and still hopefully create some mitochondria. Maybe, again, if you're being technical, you'd criticize me and say, well, those mitochondria are going to develop in muscles that you're not going to use in the race on September the 13th, Dennis, if you're rowing and swimming. And I'd say that, again, possibly is true. However, I'll say, it might be different muscles, but guess what? It's the same circulatory system, same cardiovascular system that I'm going to be using on those days. So I think that's a better formula for me, at least anyway, I think. Okay, so there is still 2 more days per week when I am going to be running, but they are different styles of training on these days I'm going to be running. I've called them shorter intervals and longer intervals. Let me start talking about the longer intervals first. This is the column you see there that's pinkish or peachish in color. And the reason why I structure the longer intervals in this way, it's really a holdover from the days before GPS watches existed. And I was running just based on time, not distance. So to me, this works. Might I be better off using meters? Maybe, I don't know. But like I said, old habits die hard for me. So what I do in my longer intervals is I run for certain lengths of time. And it's very, very straightforward. There's 3 different types of workouts underneath my longer interval days. So first one, I run for 10 minutes for sets of 4. So that makes obviously 40 minutes of total running that day. But also of importance here, I do follow underneath all these longer interval workouts actually a pretty strict rest period. So it's do a set of 10 minutes worth of running, then it's a 3-minute and 20-second rest in between. So that works out to 10 minutes of rest interspersed amongst my 4 working sets where I'm running for 10 minutes. The second one is a day where I'm going to run 20 minutes at a time times 2. So only 2 sets of 20 minutes in duration. Again, 40 minutes in total of running. And for this day, I take a, again, very deliberate 10-minute rest in between these 2 working sets. Third day, I do 15-minute sets. So run for 15 minutes. Now this is a bit longer, I know, 45 minutes worth of running. And on these days, I take very, very strict, structured 5-minute rest in between. Very importantly, all these workouts that I've just spoken about underneath the column of longer intervals are meant to be above zone 2. So I'm working hard, real hard actually, sometimes unpleasantly hard. But I don't know necessarily how far I go, but what I do find very advantageous is to have the GPS watch to tell me my pace. So I try to keep a pace above my hopeful race pace at the Toronto Zoo race on September the 13th. So all these sets will be done faster than 5 minutes per kilometer. I told you my goal, right, is to run the Toronto Zoo in 50 minutes or less. That is obviously equating to a 5-minute per kilometer pace. The longer interval sessions should hopefully all be faster. And the final day, the final style of workout, I've labeled it shorter intervals in the blue column you see there. And these are things that I find them more interesting. Again, someone might critique me and say, Dennis, if your goal is to run a 10K in 50 minutes or less, you should do more longer work. Maybe so, but these are things here that I find them interesting. One of them, and I'll explain more on the days that I actually do these things. One of them is running the steps at Castellona. Wait till you see what that's all about. Another one is sprinting. I'll take you out with me on the track one day to talk about that as well. And then I think I might take you here for the third and final one as well. The third shorter style interval is 1 kilometer. This is the longest of the short. So in that one, I run for 1 kilometer as fast as I can. The only workout actually on the whole table where I actually go by distance, sorry. But I go to a track and I try to run a kilometer as fast as I can, do 5 sets of that. And because these are all labeled shorter intervals, my pace in each of these styles of workouts is actually going to be even faster than in my longer interval training. And so that's a pretty good snapshot, if I do say so myself. I'm quite proud of this table that I've created. It looks lovely. And it is the first 6 weeks of my training. Like I said, I'll come back in the second video and we'll cover the second half, the second 6 weeks of my training for the Toronto Zoo 10K race. But first, the easy part is now over. All I have left to do is the hard part. I actually have a workout to do today. But, unfortunately, here's my first challenge. Toronto is currently in the midst of a wicked heat wave. 33 degrees out, apparently. Feels like 46 out there. Welcome to running. Better make sure I'm well hydrated. Okay, first workout of the summer done. Probably will not have a hotter day in the summer to exercise. I don't know what temperature it got up to, 43, 44, something like that. When that happens, your ability to dissipate heat goes down the tubes. You cannot radiate heat into an environment hotter than you. Very little wind today, no convection. The RPE for this workout, through the roof. Hopefully it gets easier from here on. All right, day 2. First thing we're going to do on day 2 is find out how much I weigh. Not that I weigh myself ever, really, but we're going to use this to see. Ooh, I'm a bit lighter than usual. That's because of all the water that I lost yesterday. So usually I'm between 178 and 180. With a 1% expected daily fluctuation. That's a bit more. I'm 177. So I'm going to convert that to kilos. And the only reason why I have that, 2 reasons really. I'm going to use it to calculate my carbohydrate and protein requirements. And I might weigh myself again at the end of all this to see if the weight changed. But I doubt it because I've been about 178 to 180 fantastic pounds for nearly 30 years, I'd say. Okay, day 8, which means week 1, totally in the books. And week 1 was a perfect week. Did everything I was supposed to do. And today was my second long run. Way less hot than last week, but still pretty hot. And I ran for 50 minutes instead of 45 minutes today. I still don't know exactly how fast I am going. And that is because I bought this GPS watch, which is a very useful tool, to be honest, to tell you the pace you're going. But as some of you may have heard before, technology is not my friend. And I bought this thing, and I did not know how to set it up in time to do the run today. So I still have no idea, actually, how fast I am going. I did run for 50 minutes today, but it's only week 2, folks. Just starting week 2, at least. So we got lots of time.
Let's talk about nutrition. What do I eat in the run of a day? Starting with, by far the best meal of the day, breakfast. Okay, so here's a pretty typical way that I would start a day, and after much deliberation, I've decided to talk about this in terms of foods instead of nutrients, because as I always say, we don't eat nutrients, we eat foods. And truth be told, full disclosure, I have never ever in my life counted calories, nor have I counted carbohydrates, although you'd think I'm training for a 10K, that would be my primary nutrient of interest. The one thing that I have tried to quote-unquote count a little bit is grams of protein. So let's talk about this breakfast that I'm going to have to start the day in terms of the foods and then maybe a little bit about the nutrients. So first thing we have, my favorite food possibly ever created. Eggs, 4 scrambled eggs, 26 grams of protein, a little bit of carbohydrate, not much, but the carbs come from my lovely, lovely sourdough bread. And about a third of that loaf is what I would usually eat, 4 slices, maybe even 5 slices to be honest. And that gives me something in the neighborhood of 65, 70 grams of carbohydrate. Reason why I choose sourdough, it's lower in the glycemic index, so I go with that sometimes. Although, to be honest, the carb of choice does vary. For example, my family has a long-standing Sunday morning tradition where we get bagels, and I'll have 2 bagels instead of the sourdough with my eggs. Half avocado on the side, and of course, don't forget my glorious, glorious cup of coffee. So, all in all, this is how I start my day. My preferred meal by a mile, breakfast. You've been sleeping for 8 hours, break your fast. I'm hungriest at breakfast. I have a big breakfast to start the day, and away I go. This gives me about, let's say, 75 to 100 grams on a good day, 42 grams of protein. But more importantly than the grams of carbs, grams of protein, is the foods, and I love all these foods. After breakfast, throughout the day, I will have 2 snacks. I don't love the snacks as much as I love breakfast. Breakfast, I really make an effort to take my time to thoroughly enjoy. But when the workday starts, I've often equated my workday as being like running an elite Ironman triathlon. 8 or 9 hours, boom, and I'm going, no stopping. I never stop to have what people might consider lunch. It's just a personal thing. There's nothing for lunch that gets me excited like breakfast, so I don't bother with it. But I do have nutrition. I grab 2 snacks. And in fact, I would say one of my main nutritional principles is to have regularly scheduled nutrition every 3 or 4 hours. The snacks always follow the exact same structure. One is a fruit with nuts. And I could do another hour-long video about the wonderful health benefits of nuts, talking about foods, not nutrients. There's more epidemiological evidence for the numerous health benefits of nuts than maybe any other food. And I have those every day with a fruit. And usually that fruit is either grapes or an apple. I find they go best with nuts. The other snack usually might look something like this. A serving of berries might be a pretty typical second fruit choice. And that always goes with a Greek yogurt. So both of these foods are beautiful. If you insist on talking about the nutrients, both of them are give or take 9 to 10 grams of protein. In this one, the protein coming from the third of a cup of nuts. In this one, the protein coming from the Greek yogurt. And maybe 20 to 25 grams of carbohydrates, depending on how big the serving of berries is or how many grapes you might eat. So that is the nutrients in each of my 2 snacks that I have throughout the day. Now, the last thing I'll say about the nutrients, because I know some keeners out there might be adding this up. You haven't seen my supper yet, but even without the supper meal, you might be doing the math and you might say, okay, for an 81 kilogram person training 5 days per week with the purpose of running a 10K in less than 50 minutes, you might conclude he seems like he's on track to meet his theoretical requirements for one of these nutrients, but maybe not the other. I'll say more about the carbs in the second video after I show you my supper and we have the complete day of nutrition. But for now, let me just finish briefly by talking about the protein, which by all accounts I am on track to meet. I think the 4 regularly scheduled doses of protein. We had a big dose at breakfast, two smaller doses throughout the day. I'll have another big dose for supper. It'll wind up being something in the neighborhood of 1.2 grams per kilo of my body weight. And like I said at the beginning, of all the nutrients that I do try to keep track of, it's really more protein than anything else. And I think I'm on track here to meet my requirements for protein, structuring a day like this.
All right, I've now done 4 long runs. The Toronto Zoo 10K is exactly 2 months away. The only thing I've missed so far, I didn't do 1 day of rowing and swimming, which is the least important thing, so I'm on pretty good track. Having 2 problems though. One is the temperature. It is diabolically hot in this city. The other problem that I'm having is technology. This is my GPS watch, which I still don't know how to use. Look at this. If you can see that, it looks like I'm trying to communicate with the Starship Enterprise. There's so much garbage on this. I don't know how to use it, so I have no idea how fast I've been running. So, running the steps at Casa Loma. Why do I call it running the steps at Casa Loma? Well, 2 reasons. Mainly because there's steps, but for now, let's just take a look at this thing called Casa Loma. It's really quite amazing, actually. It's not a very well-known fact that we have, believe it or not, in Toronto, our very own castle. It is an even lesser-known fact that I consider myself to be the Prince of Toronto. I just don't have the documentation to back that up. So these are the steps. There is 110 of them, and the workout is go up and down as many times as you can in half an hour. And I do enjoy it, I must say, especially on a beautiful day like today. Maybe it's a sadistic type of enjoyment, but here we go. All right, 110 steps. My stride lengths take them 2 at a time. Usually takes me about 30 seconds, and it looks something like this. And as many times as you can in 30 seconds. All right, welcome to sprinting. Second time sprinting, second and last time sprinting. Because, of course, sprinting would be the least specific toward my goal of running a 10K. But I like sprinting. Like I said to Brendon Rodney, moving the body as fast as you possibly can, foundational to all of athleticism. So anyway, we're going to do 1 400, we're going to do 2 200s, and then we're going to do 4 100s. And for my warm-up, I'm already started actually. 5-minute walk, then a 5-minute light jog, then a bunch of kind of traditional sprinting warm-up exercises. So that's the workout for today.
doing cartwheels around.
Yeah. Wait, let's do it when Dad's done. Don't tell him the time until he tells us the time he's done. And not yet, not yet. Stop. Yeah. How much?
1:20.
Minute and 20. Oh my God. My dad's pretty good at running.
Just purely for the sake of medical interest, I want to show you something here. You can see this lump. I've had that since I was 13 years old. What you're looking at is an example of Osgood-Schlatter's disease. So what this is, it's a repetitive strain injury. You can see, like, this is my patella, obviously my kneecap, and the patellar tendon goes down here, attaches at the tibial tubercle, and when the growth plate is open, as it was for me when I was 13, this repetitive pulling, usually it happens in males, and males that are fairly physically active. The repetitive strain on this area right here causes this bizarre lump. And as you can see, maybe this way, you can kind of see how it juts off to the side here. My leg is like this, but this lump is kind of pointing off in this direction in a somewhat abnormal and rather grotesque manner. I heard that, like, the number, it's usually only like a 1 in 10 where this persists into adulthood. That's the number I heard. But I happen to be one of the lucky ones in 10 that still have it. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's not, put it this way, if I do not run a 10K in under 50 minutes, this won't be the reason. However, on the other hand, this is certainly not helping.